Thanks for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast. If you like what you hear today, be sure to like it, follow it, tell everyone you know about it. You can even give it a big fat review. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for regular updates about upcoming guests. Today, we're brought to you by Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee. Be sure to stop by their state-of-the-art dealership next to BJ's in Big Y on Memorial Drive, or head over to metrojeep.com and make it Metro. And then drive home in your new Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram today.
It's Baxie's Musical Podcast.
In a lot of families, there can be an expectation that the next generation will carry on the family business. Sometimes that works out, and sometimes it totally depends on what kind of business your family is in. There's also times when the last thing that the next generation wants to do is follow in their parents' footsteps. That is, unless they're able to incorporate their own individuality and vision rather than simply rely on the family name exclusively. And honestly, there's lots of examples of just that sort of thing happening in music too. Some people successfully build upon their family legacies. Others look beyond that with the hopes of building their own. And sometimes it is possible to do both. For example, today we're going to talk about 25-year-old Blake Watt. Blake Watt is the creative force behind a project known as Family Stereo. After releasing a number of amazing singles over the last 6 years, Blake and Family Stereo have released their first full-length album. The name of this album is called The Thread. The first single, Fault Line, is a beautifully sophisticated and well-crafted folk-inspired song that shows incredible depth and an ever-growing maturity from his earlier work, which, as I stated, is also really good. So good that his music captured the attention of Bella Union Records, the label owned by Simon Raymond of the Cocteau Twins, who was on the podcast earlier this year. And if you recall, Simon doesn't usually sign someone unless he really believes in both the music and the person making it. Now, here's where the family business comes in. Blake Watt is the son of both Tracey Thorn and Ben Watt of the 80s British duo Everything But the Girl, whose own brand of lush and sophisticated pop songs yielded 11 albums, 5 of which went gold, including the platinum-selling Walking Wounded in 1996. They also had 41 singles, 6 of which reached number 5 or higher on the U.S. dance charts. Again, the Watt family business did pretty well for themselves. But in the case of Blake Watt and Family Stereo, he's just released a debut album that clearly shows he's found his own unique voice that not only stands on its own, it also carries on an amazing family tradition, a tradition that should be on your Family Stereo too. To talk about the new record and a whole lot more is my guest today, Blake Watt from Family Stereo on Baxie's Musical Podcast. I've been listening to just about everything you've released over the last 6 years, and having listened.
Oh, nice.
Well, Spotify is great for something like that. Having listened to the latest single, Fault Lines, though, it's taken you a while to get to this point. You know, having gone through all these years of kind of honing your craft and getting this all ready to release. How do you feel of the release of this record?
Well, it's the longest I've ever sat on anything before, so I kind of feel like I have to get myself excited again because I'm so used to just recording something and then releasing it pretty much straight away. So I'm trying to sort of hang on to that feeling I had when I first made it.
I read that you already have like enough songs for the next record. So to sit on or close to it. But so when you've completed songs that have been germinating for a while and you got a whole new set of it, do you kind of feel like, hey, this new set is great, but I'm really more focused on the new stuff now?
I'm trying to not leave this album behind in my head, and I think I do want to give this album, the best attention it can get when it comes out. I don't want to just move on to the next thing straight away. You know.
This new album's got 11 new tracks. It's not a compilation of what you've already released, although you could very easily have done that. What made this experience of recording this album different from the previous releases you've done with singles and EPs?
Well, I think, me and my producer, Sam, I think we really figured out what it was that we wanted to do over the course of making those 2 EPs. And the singles before that I just made on my own. But particularly with the EPs, I think we were ready to make an album when the time came. I don't think we would have been we wouldn't have been ready to make one before, or I don't think it would have sounded as realized. Maybe like I think we had to go through that process of like 3 years of making music to get the synergy right, and be able to make a full LP together.
Yeah, I've been reading some biographical information that was sent over, and also looking at other interviews that you've done, and there seems to be this kind of focus on this infusion of like folk inspired undertones. I kind of see it a little bit more than that. Do you see it that way, or do you see it differently also?
I mean, I guess I always write at the guitar, like I always start on the acoustic guitar, so I guess. But I think folk can be a bit limiting as a genre. It's definitely not folk music, but I guess folk songwriting is like the basis of my style.
I mean, I can see where some people may hear it that way, especially the earlier stuff. I hear a sophistication in your songwriting, and coupled with an atmospheric approach that blends really beautifully. And that is somewhat of a family trait, and we'll talk more about your family in a little while. But I mean, your first couple of singles released in 2020, that would have made you like 19, 20 years old. I mean, how has your songwriting matured over the last 6 years? Because to me, I hear significant growth since 2020. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I write more personally now. I think I found more of a style in Pared Back, maybe slightly more kind of impressionist, like just like sort of sketching things kind of in like a maybe favoring mood over like specific meaning, or like really vivid kind of narrative. I guess I like lyricists that do that.
I mean, you talk about writing from a personal perspective. The first single, Fault Lines, as I'm listening to it, I'm hearing like a lot of a real sense of longing in those lyrics. And my understanding is that it relates to a long distance relationship that you were in. What can you tell me about that song and about that situation?
Well, it was a co-write between me and my producer. He wrote the instrumental, and it was very moody, and I wanted to match the way it sounded, and I was sort of picturing like these like kind of craggy, like coastal scenes that helped me to really get into. That's how the song felt to me, like a sort of seaside, very English kind of, looking at the rocks below, and how. And I guess the image of the fault lines, or standing at the fault line of something, being on the brink of something bad, or maybe like a realization about something. Yeah, I mean, I wrote that song very quickly. It was the last song that we did for the album. We thought we were done, and then Sam sent me that track, and I was just like, oh, I want to write something over this, and I did it in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
So it was a very immediate.
And that winds up being the first single. What are the chances, the odds of that?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I think it just felt, and it felt like maybe because we did it at the end, it felt like it was the natural culmination of something.
Yeah, a few months ago, I interviewed Simon Raymond of the Cocteau Twins, and also the owner of Bella Union Records. And one of the things that we had talked about, and he also wrote about this in his book, which I thought was really interesting. When he goes and he signs an artist to a contract, there are a couple of things that are on his mind. One, he has to love the music, and that's first and foremost. But what he also says is that he also has to love the people who are making the music, and that there has to be a connection between him and the artist. And a lot of record companies simply don't give a damn about that sort of thing. But he really does. Tell me about the relationship with him and with Bella Union, and how did that even develop in the first place?
Well, he heard my song Matter in like 2023, and he got in touch to say how much he loved it, but he couldn't take me on at the time. So we were just emailing for like a year, And I just kept pestering him and just saying, let's make an album, and he was like, I'm a bit busy, but I do want to. And eventually, it came through, and I went down to Brighton to meet him, and we had lunch, and I think, we just really got on. And he sort of, offered me a record deal on the spot, really. I mean, I guess after a year of harassing him, but
that's not exactly on the spot. On the spot is I
yeah,
heard it and I'm 5 seconds in, and then I'm signing a contract.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But his approach is pretty unique in that way, because like I said, a lot of record companies aren't so concerned about the individual. They're really more concerned about the viability of the music. And I think for him, he looks at it in both ways. And I think that's a pretty unique approach.
I mean, yeah, like it really feels like a family at Bella Union. Like a lot of the bands coming out, the sort of up and coming ones that are releasing albums this year, a lot of them like work with him at the record shop, or that they are involved in other projects that he's signed, and it's a really lovely thing they have going on.
Yeah, I've spoken to a number of acts that are on that label, and they all kind of say the same thing about it. There's something about it that feels very comfortable and very right, and I think that's part because of Simon himself and who he is, and the kind of artist that he is also. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, you grew up in a musical family. I mean, your parents had a very successful music careers, everything but the girl. How much have they guided you through the process of navigating this part of your career? Have they been involved, or have they taken kind of a hands-off approach with you on this?
I mean, I think the main thing that they're really useful for is the sort of emotional guidance. They've been through like the ups and downs of being an artist, and so when I'm struggling, I can go to them, and they're really great for that. But apart from that, I think they have been pretty hands off, and they've let it happen naturally. They definitely could have done more, like if they wanted, or had both of us wanted that. Maybe like really pushed me into getting in a room with songwriters or whatever, but we just, that's not really how they are, and it's not really how I am.
It's interesting when I said this, there's a family trait in the way you write. I mean, there is a sophistication between the way Everything But the Girl was their songs are written, and also how you write. But the difference is, I think you're very, very much your own person in this, and it's not like it's the same thing, or you trying to ride the coattails of your family at all. I don't get that sense in any way. But I do get the sense that there is a very, very mature kind of songwriting process that does seem to connect to your DNA in some way. Do you feel that when you're writing and the songs are coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I think they just played good music around the house, and I think the thing that we share the most is just a love of good pop music. I guess I say that my songwriting is folky, but my other big love is a great pop song, and
Yeah.
I guess I would love to not write the best pop song, but I look up to pop songwriters. It's a really incredible art form. So I think we have a similar sensibility. We have similar taste, me and my parents. Yeah.
When you were a kid, now this would have been 80s, 90s or so, maybe actually no, before that you would have been around 2000 or so.
Yeah.
Your parents had good success in those previous decades, in the 80s and 90s, but in 2000 they kind of put the band Everything But the Girl on hiatus for the next 22 years. So you would have been a child at this point. How much did you understand growing up what your parents had done and how musical they were? Was it something that was just that was a part of your growing up, or was it just like a normal family at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was always just it was just normal. I think that I always knew they were musicians, and that they'd had a successful career. We grew up. We had a good childhood, me and my sisters, and I think we knew that that they'd made a success of it. But I don't think I really started to maybe feel the full weight of it until quite recently, actually. And playing shows with them, because they've been playing again, and I've been playing in their band, and so that sort of brought it all very up close in, for good and for weird, you know. um but like, you know, they're very low key. Yeah, they don't like to talk about it that much, unless I get them going, and then they love to talk
Right.
about it.
So what was that sense you got when when you did kind of discover what that was all about? Like you said, it was recently. What was that thought process like for you? Did it just, I mean, was it kind of out of the blue? I mean, how did that look?
Well, I started listening to their music when I was a teenager, and I've been listening to it for years now. But I think maybe playing these shows with them, I think that's when it really hit me, like how loved they are.
Mm.
And seeing all these people coming to the shows, it's kind of weird. Like it's amazing, but it's like it's also weird. Like they're just my parents, you know.
Like they still want you to clean your room or mow the lawn or all that other stuff.
Yeah, like and they're so not like flash, or they're very quiet people. They just like gardening and reading, and they're very low key.
So you start playing music on your own about the age of like 15. By 17, you're writing music. What sort of music was connecting with you at that time?
Well, as a teenager, like 17, Joy Division were my favorite
Mm.
band. There was something in the emotional power of their music that really clicked with me. I think I was, just having regular teenage angst, and that just, I really channeled some deep feelings through their music. Obviously the Smiths as well. And then I guess when I went to uni, I got more into people like, American songwriters like Elliott Smith and Adrienne Lenker and Neil Young and all that.
Yeah. Those it's interesting that you say that, because in your earlier work you can kind of hear some
Mm.
of that. I mean, especially early on, definitely Elliott Smith, certainly the Smiths, I hear that as well. But as far as the point where you start writing songs and you start finding your own voice in the process of writing songs, when did that start to really come together for you? Was there a particular moment that it happened, or is it just a real slow progression or a slow process?
I mean, I feel like I'm still yet to fully find my voice. I think I'm still finding it in a way. I think it's come far even in the last year, but I suppose it really started to click when I got into people like Elliott Smith. I think I was made like, I think Morrissey when I was younger, I guess I modeled myself slightly on his singing style, but I think I've always connected with American songwriters
Yeah.
more.
Well, there's a lot of people say you don't want to connect too much to Morrissey if you can help it, but that's understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I listen to them that much anymore, which is a shame, but
Yeah.
yeah.
When you're a kid and you're exposed to a lot of different music, and like you said, your parents exposed you to a lot. There was a lot of music being played in the house. What kind of music was being played in the house? I mean, was like everything but the girl collection sitting on the turntable all the time, or were there other things that they were exposing you guys to?
Well, people always think that we grew up in a really musical household, but like my parents, they don't listen to like a ton of music all the time. I think when they are, they're listening to it in their own time. And my dad was getting into DJing, so there was a lot of house music that I heard growing up. Um, but I'm trying to think. I can only really remember hearing music like on car journeys,
Hmm.
or I guess I can remember hearing like Chic out of the jukebox. Yeah, like dancing to disco as a child.
I mean, because every kid at some point is embarrassed by the music their parents are listening to. I know I was when I was a kid, and I know my kids were embarrassed by the shit I was listening to. Did you ever say to your mom and dad, "Oh my God, mom, what do you listen to this for?"
No, like
Wow.
almost everything they've put me onto, I like. Yeah, they've got good taste.
I guess so. So when they started to play again around 2022, at that point, did they start asking you for advice, or did you take a hands-off approach and say, "You guys do what you do"?
Well, I mean, they only started playing at the beginning of last year because they made an album in 2022, but
Right.
they didn't start playing live until beginning of last year. But from the inception of that, they sat me down and were like, "We want you to be part of this." which was so lovely. And they were like, we want you to play your own, like I play one of my own songs in the set. I do a cover. They were like, we want this to be a family thing, because you're a musician in your own right.
Well, that's what I said earlier. It's like you're definitely your own person individually, but also creatively. And I think a guy like Simon would not have signed you to Bella Union had that not been the case. That if it just been, well, this is the novelty of the son of these people, that would have been one thing. But has there ever been any pressure for you as an artist because of your parents' earlier success, or have you been able to kind of skirt your way around that rather than face, say, what like a poor Julian Lennon has had to go through for his career? How has that been for you?
No, I definitely have, days where it weighs heavy on me, and I feel the weight of what's come before and the pressure to live up to that. Especially since, when you look back on a career, you remember the best bits,
right?
And you don't remember the less good bits. So it's easy to think that their career was a massive success, and it was. But there were periods where they weren't writing stuff they were enjoying, or they put out an album they didn't like. But I try and confront it, because I think I used to try and ignore it,
right,
and it didn't help.
I think
it's never going to go away.
I think when you take the approach of writing really personal stuff, and you're leaving yourself to be vulnerable as an individual in what you write, and not showing a hell of a lot of fear in order to do that, because it does take a little bit of courage to expose yourself like that. I think that does tend to separate individuals, and that would separate you from your parents, because it would be, like I said, it would be very easy to take a very pop driven sensibility and then trying to become everybody but the girl and their son, and that's not what you've done. And I got to applaud you for that, because not everybody has that experience with their own music. And I think if people listen to the music carefully, they can easily see that there is a significant seismic difference between what they did and what you're doing now, and it's really pretty refreshing to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, do you feel as if you've been able to separate yourself from that too?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we have very different approaches to music. I think they're not nearly as inspired by the American songbook as I am. That they would definitely grew up on more of the British indie and jazz. Yeah. I think there's more of a jazz sensibility for them. I can listen to it up to a point, but yeah, I guess I just I just like what I like.
So what's the plan moving forward? Obviously, are you looking to get on the road? Are you looking to start working on the next record? What's the plan moving ahead?
Well, we're going to play a few dates around the UK, just a small one, because we haven't really done a proper tour as a band. We've only really played in London. I've played solo a couple of times outside of the UK, but we're still completely unknown to most people. So we're going to just take it slow, hopefully get on maybe a good support tour next year or later this year. But I think it'll be the momentum of writing and releasing another album that will hopefully build our reputation.
There's a show that I saw on YouTube with you and your band playing, and I listened to probably the good first 15 minutes of it, and it unfortunately I wanted to listen to the rest of it, but didn't have the time to do it. But I thought I was really impressed by how great it sounded, and it really sounded like that this is something that is developing. That's something that's pretty special. I can see where a Simon Raymond could look at this and go, yeah, I think we could be a part of this. I thought you guys sounded terrific.
Thank you. That's because we paid someone £10,000 to mix it professionally.
Yeah, but I mean, you can tell a crap performance with or without great production too. You can see right through that. But that was not the case with you and your band. It really, really did sound good.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we do try.
Well, Blake, I wish you all the best of luck with this record, and I appreciate you taking some time to talk about it. Best.
Thank you. Well, the next one's out tomorrow. So.
Tomorrow? Well, I guess I better get busy then.
Yeah. Thanks
Great.
so much, man.
Absolutely, Blake. Best of luck to you.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye-bye now. The name of the new album from Blake Watt and Family Stereo is called The Thread, available now through Bella Union Records. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can reach me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again to Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee for their support, but most of all, thanks to you for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast.